Roundtable Decision. I'm your host, Ward Birkenoff. And in today's video, we are going to be talking about my college stories, or something that has happened within my college experience. So far, well, I'll backtrack a little bit. A lot of conservative radio show hosts and people within more conservative moments are older generations like my dad and like Robert from the generational gap. They're always very, very concerned about the college atmosphere for today. And as of now, I've been going to a community college near my house. And that's where I've been doing my schools for the past 2 years. And eventually I'm going to be going to a 4-year university that more of the liberal type of atmosphere the older generations are talking about, or at least my dad has been talking about. But I've really only had one class so far, and a class I'm taking now, that I've really started to see this wariness come into form. Because all my other classes before then either had more professors that were more along with what I thought, or just in general, it wasn't really a class that was for that. Such as, I was thinking that the speech class I took of public speaking might have one of these challenges within a liberal type of professor or a liberal type of environment. Not that that's a super bad thing, but just more of trying to preach third thoughts rather than preaching more of a round spectrum of thoughts compared to what I believe and my personal thoughts and what my family has taught me and everything like that. But before the intro gets too long and gets more complicated than it really needs to be, the only class where I've really experienced that so far is in my government class. And I didn't want to take government next semester because I was going to be right during the election, even though I might end up taking a second government class, but we'll see from there. But in the government class, I could tell that the professor is much more of a liberal, Democrat-leaning professor that wants to get her messages across. So as I was going about this first class, I started taking notes about what was getting covered, like tests and what you wanted to see from us and what to expect in our class. You know, the general college stuff that every student goes through. But I started to on the side of my notes, and you may not be able to really see them here because my handwriting is garbage. And anyone in my family or anyone outside of my family that knows me in the slightest knows that. But I started to take notes of little things she talked about and little things she said that were almost subtle hints to what her personal thoughts were and what the message and what she wanted to preach to come across came out. And the biggest topic was race over politics, or race over policy. So a lot of what she was talking about was that if a woman was a president, that things would instantly change. That if a person of color was in president, things would instantly change. And a lot of the students had kind of the same thoughts, including one of my students in the class basically said that if there was a woman president, that everything would be solved. And at that point, I rose my hand and basically was like, well, I don't think it's necessarily that easy that just a woman president will solve everything. Do I think it might help? Maybe. We don't know. We never had one. But I would like someone that is focused more on policy rather than race. But their whole argument was just race by itself. That a person of color or a person that is not a man, essentially, would be better than if the person was just a man. She also said, as a government professor, that the electoral college needs to go gone, needs to vanish, needs to be done with, is kind of what she said. And that kind of shocked me, because a person who is a government teacher and should know about government and should follow government, that came across as rather surprising. I know it's a very large talking point now, but it doesn't really make much sense to me if you were an actual government teacher to kind of say those typical things. Because the electoral college allows, in very simple terms, everybody to have an equal vote within the areas they live. If you take away the electoral college, you're letting the major cities basically get to pick who wins. Now, the idea of a popular vote and that person winning does have some grounds to it, so it's not an outrageous claim, but it still kind of caught me by surprise and started to really make my mind think and say I could be in the first class where a lot of like these conservative professors are overhyping compared to what I've had before. She also said that the Democratic Party is mostly positive compared to the Republican Party. So again, that just kind of shows where she stands on the line. She also said that basically asked if she thought everything was even race-wise in politics today. In other words, do you think that people of color or people of women or, like I said, people of color have an equal opportunity in today? Then do they have an equal opportunity? And I was thinking in my head, have they ever had an equal opportunity? And basically, when I brought up that question in my head, I wasn't necessarily agreeing with what she said. I was just more saying, look, the progress has been made, and you have to recognize that there has been progress that is made, and not just focus on the negative. And just the fact that you don't think everything's as even as it should be now doesn't mean that it's not necessarily even as a whole, if that makes any sense. It makes sense in my head, but I could just be talking random stuff here, and maybe nobody else agrees with that point of thought. But it was just something that kind of ran through my head. And again, I've kind of already stated this in a similar way, but I started to realize that there could be some truth within what these conservative politics people are saying and are worrying about the younger generation. Because just in that one class, I started to realize that a lot of what the students' talking points were was over mass media. And if you looked at my last video, you could kind of hear that I mentioned that this video would be a little bit focused on it as well. Because a lot of what the students were saying over race was just preaching what these mass media sites want you to believe and want you to hear. And I don't think that that's necessarily a good thing, because brainwashing a mass amount of people into believing what you think and not letting them have their chance to decide themselves is very, 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 very scary. Because at the college age, we're very impressionable. If you're not somebody who follows politics or thinks politics is very interesting, and you have someone at just such a high authority as a professor teaching you these thoughts, you can instantly believe what the professor is saying, what she's saying, and come home with those thoughts and take those thoughts into your life from the college student all the way to where you have kids yourself. And that is very, very, very interesting, because if you're able to win over the younger generation in college through, let's just say, a democratic viewpoint, because that's what everybody has been saying, and studies have been proved that there's more liberal-leaning professors than conservative-leaning professors. So if you're able to win the college generation into believing in these thoughts, it can become where you take a whole mass amount of people and turn them into one party. Similar to what my great-grandparents all voted Democrat, no matter what. Like my great-grandmother just recently passed away last year, and the last vote she actually voted in, at like 98 years old, which is rather impressive by itself. But she was so strict that you just had to vote Democrat. And my mom always tells me the story of Grandpa Clifford, who was one of my great-grandfather, who I kind of briefly met, but he passed away before I really got to know him much as a person. But he wouldn't let my mom leave his house unless if my mom said that she was a Democrat. And this was before she even had a chance to vote, way before she even had a chance to vote. But that was how they were so strong Democrats that they believed in it regardless of whatever happened. They were ticking that blue box at such an extreme point. So if you're able to win through these college students, through these professors that in this case are liberal leaning, and mass media regurgitation of what the professor and what the students are reading, it's a very, very, very intense loop that I don't see really ever ending. And she brought up this Eyewitness News that Jimmy Fallon runs occasionally. And it talked about how Donald Trump signed the Declaration. And we know that Donald Trump hasn't signed the Declaration of Independence. It was signed long, long, long ago. And the people believed in what they said. And obviously that kind of talks to the ignorance of a lot of people and kind of hints at my last point. Because that is what I was really more scared about. Now, I know since I read a lot of mass media articles and I listen to a lot of people, and not just conservative people, because I try to be well balanced in what I read and what I think, even if I don't really think about the other side. Kind of similar to what Steven Crowder says. You have to be able to understand the other side to know your side even more. You have to be well-rounded in your approach. You can't just be one side because you're not always right. And I do take that to heart, and I at least try to attempt it as much as possible. But when you have professors that are just preaching one message and just randomly preaching a particular viewpoint, that can become very intense. And she also called Trump Carrot Man. So she's calling insults to the president, similar to what mass media and everything is kind of preaching to the president. So I don't really know exactly what I'm trying to tell you in this video, besides just kind of sharing my news stories of college, like what I did in one of my previous videos when I was in the speech class. But it was starting to really turn in my head that there could be more of an actual problem than I thought there was. Now, I don't think that the problem is as big as many people say it is, but it still is a problem. And this video went on a little longer than I really planned to in my head, but I'm glad I was able to really think it out with you if you stayed to the end. And I hope you'll come back to my channel more, where I might discuss my college experiences more, or talk about what's in the news, or anything else. And feel free to comment in the video if you think of another topic you want me to see me cover, because I've covered everything from Star Wars to my college stories to mental health. So anything I'm really fine with covering with. And also definitely feel free to join my Discord, where I have questions of the days. And again, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you the next time.